Okay, so we've got another preset submitted by a Quad Cortex user wanting me to take a look at it. And for this preset, there's really nothing specific that they said is a problem. They just kind of wanted my opinion on the preset and any suggestions I have for kind of improving it. And they're definitely shooting for kind of a John Petrucci Dream Theater kind of tone. In fact, the preset's built around captures for his Mesa Boogie amp. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the tones. We're going to kind of look at how they've structured it. You know, if there's any suggestions I have on improving it, I'm going to kind of make those, and maybe we'll tweak a few things. And one thing I'll say is, just because I would do something a certain way doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. Doesn't even mean it's the best way to do it. It's just a way I found to get kind of successful tones out of the Quad Cortex. So realize it's the way I do it might be different than the way you do it. Obviously, I have my own preferences in terms of what I want the tones to sound like. I'm definitely not a super high gain player. In fact, you know, this guitar is probably the closest I have to, you know, a Petrucci kind of guitar. The pickups aren't super high output, but you know, I think this was the closest I have to kind of a Majesty or something like that. So let's go ahead and dive into the preset, and we'll go through the tones. Before we do that, just a reminder, hit the like, maybe leave a comment. Those kinds of things really help kind of the analytics on small channels like mine. If you like the video, please consider subscribing. And there's also a Sweetwater affiliate link in the description if you're so inclined. But let's dig in. So there's 5 scenes to this preset. He's got a clean, he's got a couple rhythms. He has a rhythm that's panned to one side. For now, we're just going to focus on the stereo ones. We'll leave that be for now. And then he's got a lead tone. So let's just hear what they sound like. Here's the clean. So a good amount of effect on that. Here's the tight rhythm. Huge. And then a lead. So good tones, a lot of effects going on there. Let's go through each one and look at how they've got it set up. So for the clean tone, they've got an opto compressor on the front. They're going through a Mesa channel 1 of the Johns amp. They've got a splitter here. They're doing a normal split, which means sending both left and right to both channels. The first one is going through a chorus and to multi-out. The second one is going through a doubler down to row 3. We're doing a stereo split, so this is good. They're splitting the left and right, which is important because the doubler that comes before it is a stereo effect. So you've got to do a split on the stereo, otherwise you'd just be combining those stereo effects into mono again. He's running each through a pitch shifter, so just doing a little bit of fine pitch control. He's got a tape delay on each channel. One's at 280, the other's at 560. Both of these are at 100% mix. So this is definitely a wet path. So he's got a dry path going through the chorus, and he's got a wet path coming down through this pitch shifter and the delay. And then you've got a plateless reverb on the end. So let's hear what each kind of path sounds like. So here's the kind of dry path. It's still going through a chorus, but it doesn't have the delay and reverb on it. And if we go up to here, just the wet path, you can hear it's almost like a shimmer reverb a little bit. So it sounds pretty good. If I was going to make any adjustments, one of the things I would say is we're not really getting a lot of effect from these pitch shifters because you're running them through 100% delay. So I would probably bring this delay back down to 50%, maybe even bring down the mix on the reverb a little bit, and then bring the output up of the wet path. So I've made the wet path a little dry so we can hear some of that pitch shift effects. Maybe a little more reverb to get it back towards where they were. Now, one thing I would say is typically for this kind of pure clean tone with a lot of chorusing, probably wouldn't use a tape delay. I'd be more likely to use a digital delay or maybe an analog delay. I'm going to leave it be because there might have been a reason why they did this in terms of just wanting the warmth of that tape delay. But I probably would have done a digital delay on this just to kind of get more of a top end spark, a little higher fidelity tone. So we move on to the tight distortion. So this one, let's look at what the splitter is. So the splitter is sending it 100% down this second path. So it's not going out this kind of main path. And then it's going through a doubler. He's triggering it off the input. He's got the spread at 15. And then he's running it through just a really light amount of reverb. You can see he's got the decay really low and the pre-delay is pretty much off. So one thing I would say is I'm not a huge fan of using the doubler by itself. I feel like, so to talk about how it works, a doubler splits your signal into left and right and then subtly changes the delay on one. And for me, you get this big stereo spread, but it kind of feels like it hollows out the middle when you're listening to it on speakers. So I like the doubler, but I also like to have like a dry signal going through the middle. So what I would do is I would change the balance back to 5. So we're going to send it through both. So now it's going to sound like this. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll bring up the effects level on the doubler then, because when you've got the dry path going through the middle, you're kind of overbalancing that dry level on the doubler, and the effects level needs a little bit of a boost to catch up a little bit. I would probably drop this a little bit. I don't like the spread that high. So that's pretty good. So one thing I would say, that's a lot of gain. I wish it was a little tighter. I know they've got an 808 here, but for that kind of heavy tone, to get it tighter, what I like to do is I like to use the Friedman BOD. And one of the things about this overdrive pedal is everything is additive, meaning I set the gain and bass and treble and presence all to 0. And it's still got signal coming through because this is an additive pedal. And then what I do is I crank up the tight, and I bring down the trim, and I might add a little bit of bass in. So I like that because I feel like it's a little bit tighter. If you wanted to lessen that, you could bring these down. Usually what I do with the tight and the trim is I kind of do opposite. So you can see I've got tight on 9 and the trim on 1. If I wanted to lessen the effect of this, maybe I would go to 8.2 or I'd go 10.0 if I wanted more. So I move them kind of together in that way, but we'll leave it like this for now. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. All right. So I think this one, it's the same except it's turning on this chorus. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this one over. And it was huge. It was pink. And then we're just going to go here. We're going to turn this on. So now it's going to sound like the tight one, but just with the chorus on it, which is, I think, what they were doing. Maybe what we'll do is we'll bring this up just a little bit, just to get the spread a little bit wider. I like that. Save that so we don't do something stupid and lose it. And now, last but not least, the lead. So, all right, so they're turning on. Oops. I forgot to assign that to scenes. All right, so for the lead, they're turning on their tube screamer into the mesa. They've got a separate delay. They're running a dual delay. All right, that's a good amount of delay. And then, oh, they've got this, so it's a balance 5. So dry path going out. This is a wet path. That's pretty effective. That's a lot of mix. So that sounds pretty good. But what if we were to change out the tube screamer for the Freeman? We're going to add a little more bass and a little bit of gain. So that's pretty good. plays a little longer than I would do. I would maybe just do like the Andy Timmons kind of thing. How are we doing in terms of level? I think we need a little more level on this, so we're just gonna push the output a little bit on the maybe don't need the lead as tight, so I might bring that back just a little bit. I like it. So let's go through what we've got. We've got a really lush, clean tone. We've got a real dry. And then pretty good. So we'll save that. Okay, so as you can see, it didn't make huge changes to this preset. I think there was a lot of good tones here. A lot of what I did here was just kind of my personal taste in terms of just trying to fill things out a little bit, make things maybe a little bit tighter. That could be because I'm not a huge kind of high gain person. I really like to have those tones super tight. That's why I really like that Freeman. I did a whole video on the techniques you could use to that. Obviously, the Freeman's one, a Tube Screamer is another, the Rat is another. And I hope you found this helpful to check out, and hopefully maybe you learned something you could do with your own presets. If you have any questions, feel free to put in the comments below. If you have a preset you'd like me to look at, feel free to reach out via email or DM me on Instagram. You can find links to those in my channel information, the About. And as always, thanks for watching.